Alright, we got some pictures of Lakers rookie Adou Thiero and Chris Manon working out in the Lakers practice facility. You know, we've talked about Adou Thiero before, talked about some film and his overall game and expectations for next season, but we haven't talked much about Chris Manon. And if you have no idea who I'm talking about, he is a current two-way contract for the Lakers, one of their two current two-way contract players, the other one being Christian Koloko. Manon, being a rookie, played Summer League with the Golden State Warriors. The Lakers actually played against him, and he was a defensive menace out there on the court, bothering Dalton Connect, getting steals, blocks, all around bothering them and being a menace on defense again. So I think this gives us a good opportunity to talk about him, go through a little bit of his college film, as I'm not sure a lot of you are familiar with him, and talk about what he might be able to become for their team. And then for Adou Thiero, I want to talk a little bit more about him, talk about if he will be a rotation player or if he has an outside chance of cracking the rotation, what it would take for him to get in there for them, and simply about his game and what he should be working on this summer. So we'll talk about that and try to break it all down here. And well, quickly beginning with Adou Thiero, quick injury update as he is cleared to be back on the court, also that he is expected to be ready for training camp, this coming from Dan Woke of The Athletic. Obviously a good sign for him after missing the latter part of his college career, also missing the Lakers Summer League and unfortunately not being able to play with them. But he's back out there on the court and fully cleared for contact and simply to be out there again too, which he definitely does need if he hopes to crack the rotation or simply get playing time at all this season. You know, with Adou Thiero, he definitely is very athletic, definitely is a very defensive-minded player, but he does happen to be a bit raw offensively. Yes, he did average roughly 15 points per game during his final year of college, but he has a lot of parts of his game that aren't refined and aren't quite up to the NBA level, one of which being his three-point shooting. I know I've talked about it and mentioned it with Adou Thiero before, but we really can't ignore the fact that he's not a great three-point shooter. And in the modern NBA, and especially on their team with guys like Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Austin Reeves that need floor spacing around them, especially given the fact that they don't really have very many floor spacing bigs, the only one being Maxi Kleber, who's not expected to be a big part of the rotation, they really don't have room for a wing player that's not a three-point shooting threat, and possibly even an offensive liability, as they kind of already have one at times with Jarred Vanderbilt. So for Adou Thiero to crack the rotation and eventually become a rotation player for their team, either this season or sometime down the road for them, he will have to add a somewhat reliable three-point shot and simply become more reliable offensively. After all, he was only a 28.4% three-point shooter in college. Not only that, but he barely attempted any of them per game, during his senior year attempting under 2 of them in 27.5 minutes per game, only attempting a grand total of 74 in 3 years in college, only making 21 of them, so he definitely does have some work to do. The good news here with it is that he doesn't have a broken shooting form, doesn't have a terrible shooting motion that has to be really tweaked and really adjusted for him to get any improvement. I think he actually has a pretty solid shooting form and a pretty good shooting motion that he simply needs more reps to refine and get comfortable with too. Not simply changing it all up. I really hope they don't go that route with him. I don't think they need to do that. Simply get him in the gym and refine him a little bit, and hopefully that will translate to more reliable offensive game and more reliable three-point shooting too. However, even with that, the pathway to playing time for Adou Thiero is and always will be with his defense and athletic ability. I mean, watching his highlights or actual film on defense at the college level, the guy was an elite defender and simply an elite athlete out there too. Coming back and getting help side blocks on defense, running the floor and throwing down some monstrous dunks, playing some great on-ball defense and being a pretty damn good screen navigator for his height and length. Adou Thiero has some major potential and upside on defense even at the NBA level, even potentially during his rookie year. You know, if Jarred Vanderbilt would ever get hurt, I think this would be the direct pathway to playing time for him. In some ways, he really does reflect Jarred Vanderbilt, with his ability at his size to defend 1 through 4 on the court, is athletic enough to keep up with guards, but also big and athletic enough to match up with bigger wings, so that's kind of a backup plan to Jarred Vanderbilt. If Vando ever gets hurt, and unfortunately he does tend to get hurt quite a bit, then that's where Adou Thiero could come in for them. Kind of a good backup plan and some insurance behind Jarred Vanderbilt, another defensive-minded player that can take on tough matchups and actually win some of them too. That's what they have for Adou Thiero and kind of the short-term outlook with him. But again, if we're talking about the long-term outlook, really hoping for him to add a more reliable three-point shot, maybe make him a semblance of a 3-and-D wing for their team, something they don't have quite right now, maybe with Jake LaRavia, but that's the ultimate and long-term goal here with Adou Thiero, and hopefully it can happen sooner rather than later for him too. But then moving on to talking about Chris Manon and talking about his expectations with the Lakers going forward. I'm not sure many realize how good he is on defense and how much upside he has too. Much like Adou Thiero is a defensive-minded player, isn't as big as Adou Thiero, more of a smaller wing compared to a big wing like Thiero, but a guy that has equally if not even better upside on defense too. He kind of reminds me even a little bit of a Tony Allen, simply from how unscreenable and impossible to take him out plays on defense he is. For example, look at this play back during his final year at Vanderbilt. I think the guy literally ran around 5 or 6 screens here in one play. Here we have them matching up with Kentucky. I counted running around one screen, dodging it, then another one that's amenable to guys on defense. I don't know the exact science behind it, but watching him out there and navigating screens on defense, he simply bounces off of them and somehow finds a way to navigate them perfectly, staying with his matchup and very rarely ever switching on defense, and even if he does, he somehow finds a way to get back in the play like 99% of the time. For example, when he was matching up with the Lakers throughout Summer League, here he is defending Dalton Knecht on the perimeter, Knecht running a high pick and roll here with Julian Reese setting a moving screen that kind of temporarily takes Chris Manon out of the play, but if you know him, he's never going to give up on a play, getting back in it, and as Knecht tries to kind of absorb contact and pump fake out the rim, Manon comes from behind him and absolutely blocks his shot away. Once again, showing his effort on defense, ability to get back on defense and never give up on play. This is what you're going to get from Chris Manon out there on the court. And not only that, but the guy's a certified defensive playmaker out there on the court too, meaning he gets a ton of steals and deflections on defense. Throughout his 4-year college career, the guy averaged 2 steals per game in under 20 minutes per game, averaging 4 of them exactly per 40 minutes. Not only that, but averaging over 1 block per 40 minutes, and having an absolutely ridiculous steal rate of 5.6%. That's absolutely insane. And not to mention the fact that he had a 3.7% block rate, higher than current guys drafted in this year's draft class like Maxime Reynaud, even comparable to a Ryan Kalkbrenner, one of the best shot blockers at the D1 level this season. Absolutely insane for a player of his height and literally for a smaller wing. If you're talking about defense and versatility on defense, then you are not going to look much further than Chris Manon for a guy that's a tremendous example of it. Whether you're talking about on-ball, one-on-one defense, screen navigation, defensive playmaking, even getting help side blocks at the rim, Chris Manon's a very good and quality defender coming out of college. So if you're wondering why they gave him a 2-way contract despite not playing with their Summer League team, giving him the 2-way contract over guys like Eric Dixon, Arthur Kluma, so on and so forth, that would definitely be why here. He's simply elite on defense and probably has one of, if not the highest upside in defense of any player in this year's NBA draft that didn't get drafted. However, much like Adou Thiero, he does have some major work to do on offense, and especially in regard to 3-point shooting. Now, he was a little bit better of a 3-point shooter than Adou Thiero was, for example, being a 30.4% career 3-point shooter in college, compared to Thiero being a 28.4%, but much like Thiero did not attempt many per game, only attempting 1.6 per game in 19.6 minutes per game, even per 40 minutes, taking only 3.2 of them per game, making a grand total of 56 in his 4-year college career, attempting only 184 of them, so definitely is not very accustomed and very comfortable with 3-point shooting, is a little bit better from the corner, isn't much of an on-ball 3-point shooting threat or much of an on-ball player in general offensively. He can drive to the rim and finish above the rim, is a very good athlete, even somewhat comparable to Adou Thiero, but he does have to work on that 3-point shooting. Even worse than Adou Thiero, who can kind of play at power forward and can kind of be hidden in the dunker spot, Chris Manon will be on the perimeter offensively, so he does have to have a somewhat reliable 3-point shot, even somewhat kind of like a TJ McConnell, to where if the defense absolutely dares him to shoot, he can at least knock down the occasional shot. So I hate to sound like a broken record here for both Chris Manon and Adou Thiero, but that's the number one thing that they do have to work on, especially for Chris Manon again. That being 3-point shooting, simply finding some semblance of a reliable shot, and I would say that Chris Manon probably has more work to do, maybe even a slight tweak to his shooting motion. Isn't a terrible motion and isn't a terrible form in general, but I think he probably has to get more comfortable with it. The speed of it's not that quick, the fact that he doesn't really take that many per game, and as a shooting guard kind of point guard combo, that definitely is something he has to work on here. Overall though, I do love the addition of Chris Manon. If you watch him throughout Summer League, if you go back and watch his defensive film throughout college, there's absolutely no reason to believe that he can't be an NBA player in some form or fashion. whether that's a defensive specialist that hopefully can develop into a 3-and-D-ish kind of guard, again with the 3-point shot needing some work, but down the line here he could be a good outlook and possible rotation player for them. I like it, and if he can become even somewhat like a Tony Allen like I mentioned before, that would be a big time addition to their team and a really good potential add for their team via 2-way contract. But overall here, those are my thoughts on both Chris Manon and Adou Thiero. And well, what do you guys think? How do you feel about them with the Lakers in both the short-term and long-term outlook? Do you think they will be able to develop with their team, add a more reliable 3-point shot, and find their way into the rotation eventually? Or will they not be able to crack the rotation and simply not do anything for their team? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But I think that'll pretty much do it for this one. And if you enjoyed the video, then I'll greatly appreciate it if you dropped a like, subscribe to the channel if you have not already, and hit that notification bell to never miss out when I upload a video. But as always, thank you for watching and have a great day or night. And if you watch until the very end of this video, be sure to leave a comment saying, "Happy birthday, Kobe. We miss you."